Vamos chamar o Phil Winters. Please, Phil, come on. Give to get.
Excellent. Do I have a microphone? Microphone?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. I am so pleased to be back in Portugal. My first question, how many of you saw me here last year? Maybe a couple of you? Okay. For the 4 or 5 of you, forgive me, because I need to show everyone else how I think. Yeah? Everyone has to get the same foundation so that I can begin this presentation. Let's just start. One of the challenges we all have is this customer orientation. Tom talked about it earlier. We talked about customer life cycle, and every one of us has a different view of what that customer orientation means. For me, it's very easy. It starts with the customer experience. Now, for most of us, the customer experience starts when someone comes to us and starts engaging us to purchase a product or service. This could be consumer, it could be business to business. They take delivery and they use our product or service. That is the customer experience. It's absolutely not. The customer experience, as seen from the customer's perspective, starts much, much, much earlier. And I think we all know this intuitively. That's why I have a tendency to think of this. Each one of us, when we make a decision about anything, we have certain needs. And a need is not, I need a Ducati. A need is, I need something that's safe, I want something that looks cool, I have social needs, I have an emotional attachment. Those are needs. That's why I buy a Ducati or whatever. And for each one of us, those needs are important. And when I start making decisions, I start looking for options. I then go through a process of narrowing down, and eventually I may come to you and your organization for your product and service. But it's very, very important to understand that in today's world, if we only start with our social media and all of our different activities with channels, when the customer has come to us, most of them have already made a decision. And regrettably, it's not always for us. Why? Well, it has to do with what I call touch points. I do not call them channels. Absolutely not. Channels are what we do at customers. Touch points are what I as an individual receive. I can only do it through my 5 senses. And they may be traditional. They may be talking to someone, getting an email, getting a letter, all the different things. But more and more, particularly early in the decision cycle, are coming the social media and all of the new touch points. Now, I would like to eliminate 2 words from your vocabulary. The first word, the market. There is no such thing. Have you ever met a market? Hi, I'm a market. What we're talking about here, though, are individuals who have common needs. They will have common behaviors. They will have common ways of going about doing things. And it's one of our jobs to understand that in the context of how they make decisions. So there is no such thing as the market. The other thing, and I'm afraid I already saw it in 2 presentations this morning, is the word customer life cycle. Someone said to me, oh, Phil, this is just the customer life cycle. Absolutely not. The customer life cycle, a life cycle. You think of a child being born, raised, nurtured, and you think of dying. I have never seen a customer die in a customer life cycle. What dies is our product when the customer stops using it. What dies is our brand. So let's call it the product life cycle or the brand life cycle. It is very, very important, but it's an inside-out view. When somebody said to me, the customer has left our life cycle, I say, you know what? Maybe that customer is better off not being with you. So please don't confuse what I'm talking about with the market or with the customer life cycle. Now, let's take a look at this. Any of you last year know that one of the things that I've popularized around Europe and around the world is this concept of an agenda. And this is where you say, let's define that decision cycle for our organization. Let's go in and look at the different groups. Let's take a look at the different touch points, because not all touch points will be valid in all cases. Let's make sure and then impact those. And we've heard some great examples already today of, yes, you can ignore it, you can monitor it, but you can also participate in it. It may be something new, like a community that you can activate, or once in a while there's touch points that you can control. Subscribers want to change. And what I'd like to do is just pop up a few different ones that I've worked on. The reason for that is every decision cycle will be defined a little differently for the organization. Here's the one for Lego. Here's the one for a private bank in Switzerland called Netto Bank. Here's the one for Panasonic as they do B2B2C. Here's the one for Swisscom, one of the major telcos in Europe. And what's interesting about every one of these is they'll be a little bit different because each of us, depending upon our tasks that we have to do, will go through the cycle differently. Yes, it does work for B2B. Here is an example of a B2B organization, one of the largest conference organizers in Europe. They only do B2B and how they went about defining it. And last but not least, I had the pleasure of working with some people who focus on families and children. And if they were to have a decision cycle, this thing at the beginning would change. Can any of you read that? They don't talk about needs. They talk about wishes and desires. Who is it? Walt Disney Corporation. Now, I've been able to learn a lot. And one of the things I've learned about this is that this focus from the customer perspective allows us to work with DRI, to work with Lithium, to work with Sugar CRM, and actually helps us focus in and prioritize all of these different things to create a better, memorable experience. But I've also learned something new. And this is the topic of today's presentation. I've learned something about information. If you think of our CRM or customer-centric programs at the moment, there's two things we have, because of course we want to be personal. We want to be personalized. If we're lucky enough to have a loyalty card, then we will have a tremendous amount of information legally about individuals, and we can do all sorts of fantastic things. If, on the other hand, we started using Facebook and some of the other methods, we may have a Facebook ID. We may have an email address. But all of a sudden, the amount of information we have to make it personal isn't nearly as much. What's interesting about this is if we look at all of our potential customers and prospects, there's actually still a huge gap. Do you see this chart? That's the number of individuals we would like to be reaching with a personalized message, social media or otherwise, but we can't. What do we do traditionally? We slam advertising at it, above the line activity. As I worked with these organizations, we discovered something very, very fundamental. We can actually move this line to the right using social media and being smarter about the touch points and how we do it. How? Okay, I have to run an experiment with you, right? It's audience participation time. Are you ready? How many of you have a website for your company? How many of you on your website have some sort of a download? Product brochure, white paper, something. Yeah. How many of you have something that looks like this? First name, last, yeah, well, it's all right. Now we can switch to eyes. Just have your eyes go up and down. Okay, now you are an individual. You no longer work for your company. How many of you have downloaded something off of another website? Everybody. Now keep your hands up. I want honesty here. How many of you have been 100% truthful in filling in all the information they required before? Yes. So we have a problem here. Now you can't read this, but take a look at some of the other things I've got up here. This is off of a different website where in addition they asked you your favorite color, your partner's name, how many children, Are you in debt? What's your religion? Do you have medical conditions? What's your hygiene and cleanliness standard? And what's your sexual preference, male, female, all of the above, or other? Now, do you feel a little uncomfortable maybe sharing some of that information? This is what we're learning as social media takes over, as we start understanding impact. Information has value. We place a lot of value on certain types of personal information. Some of it is not very valuable. Some of it that's private we consider to be very valuable. And by God, we don't understand what people are going to do with it, so we are careful. Here's how it looks. From least private in the middle, going to most private on the left and the right. By the way, don't take notes. There's a good white paper. Just sit back and let it take in. In the middle, language, maybe a topic choice. On the far left and far right, those things that we consider to be very, very valuable. This is the next stage as we move forward with these touch points. We have to understand this far better for our customers than we did before, because this is the answer to data privacy. This is the answer to engagement. Understanding that balance. What does this actually mean in the world? Well, I hate to say it, other companies are already ahead of us, because there's already a company out there that lets you as an individual control what information is provided on the web and through channels about you privately. There's another site that helps you sell your information about shoe size, color, etc. Serious. And last but not least, there's one that actually helps you forbid actually sharing your personal information. And these are just not one-off organizations. These are companies that have built a whole business model around the fact that individuals are starting to understand private information has value. So what do we do about this? Why is this a challenge? Well, we all know the Monty Python Life of Brian. Remember the old movie where all of the natives are following a sandal on a stick? And they're going, the sandal! And someone puts a tennis shoe on the stick and they go, oh, the tennis shoe! We're kind of going past that now in the social media. Facebook, Twitter, and a lot of the other means we have of communicating are no longer just there. People are starting to understand that, hey, they're valid for me, but as organizations, we have to understand how it's used. It all goes back to something called reciprocity. What's reciprocity in Portuguese? Say it again? Okay. I'm going to have you teach me that later, okay? We have a touch point date here, so you can, good, thank you. But you know what I mean, reciprocity. There is a definition. It comes from the Latin, the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. It is fundamental to every culture on our planet. If you are a cultural anthropologist, you would actually say, this is what makes us human. The understanding that when we give something, there is either immediate or expected return. This is what I'm talking about now in the internet world. What's wonderful about this, if you understand reciprocity, you don't have to worry about data protection. Because people see something of value, then they will give something in return. In English, we call it tit for tat, and my simple word, because I can't say it in Portuguese or other language, is I call it give to get. Notice I don't say get and then give. We have to give so we can get. And what I'd like to do for you now is walk through a number of examples talking about the different levels of information give and get. They're very relevant for social media, and that's what I'd like to show you. There's 7 of them, and I've got examples for every one, and I'm going to walk through them very quickly. Once again, an impression, the details you can get on the slides, and also from the white paper. Receive. What's receive? As an individual, I have to give nothing. You as an organization are giving me something. No questions asked. Great example, Sainsbury's in the UK When you check out at the supermarket, you get a coupon. If I bought Pampers, next time I will need beer. Because they know from all of the other data they've collected off of their loyalty card that even if you don't use your loyalty card, they can do something very personal just for you. You are receiving something, and there's an implied promise that you will come back and do something in return. Another great example, we all know Amazon, yeah? This is another example of receiving. Amazon has taken its vast understanding of clicks and everything, transformed that into something that the consumer understands as something I'm receiving. I don't have to give anything. I don't even have to have my cookies turned on. And if I really want to know what to buy with classic country singers of America, by God, then Amazon is the place to go because it will tell me. Now, what I'm showing you here, in all cases, you need data. You need information, and you process that and use it. The fantastic thing is, whether Sugar CRM, whether Drupal, whether Lithium, the data is there for you to actually start learning. What has changed, and I'm going to beg for forgiveness because the challenge of all of this has been, over the last couple of years, to do this analysis stuff, you had to go to one or two companies and pay I won't use a bad word, a lot of money. Yeah? You don't have to anymore. Here's a little example of a recommendation engine, how it looks. Here's the results of that recommendation engine. And there are now open source tools to do this for free. This example, you can go click on the website and take a look at it. If you're interested in customer intelligence and the way all this data can be collected, I strongly recommend it because it is open source. But let's move on. We've received, what's the next version? Select. That's where I make a choice. Here's my favorite example. FIO, an IGAP glass company in Belgium. That's their homepage. What can you do? You choose your language. And by doing that, you've already allowed them to personalize their experience to you. Another great example, Verivox in Germany. Independent utility portal, where they give you the best prices. But they let you make some choices. I'm interested in green energy. It's very important to me. I want a fixed contract. And with only one or two pieces of selected information, they can actually personalize the response and give me something very credible. Filter. Filter is where you actually start giving them much more choices. And filter is, for me, the best example is TripAdvisor, where you can go in and move the dials. Once again, there's no exchange of information. In the publishing world, for example, The Economist is now doing this on steroids, so that you can actually go in and filter what you get in a very, very tight way. Notice up until this point, I haven't actually required them to tell me who they are, first name, last name, etc., etc. But I've gotten that personal experience. Engage. Engage is where some of the traditions come in, such as awards or games or some of the different things you can do. Panasonic, in my opinion, is an expert at that. Now, obviously, they don't stop at Engage, but if all you want to do is apply for the award, they'll let you do that. It works not only online, it works offline. I have a great example from the Luzern Casino, Grand Casino Luzern. Everybody knows the Swiss. We have a Swiss on the stage here. Everybody knows that the Swiss never give any information about anything. But giving them an award, they'll play. And if you say, you can have the big award, but you have to give me your email address, and oh, by the way, would you like the newsletter? 78,000 people signed up. 80% of them said, oh yeah, why not? Give me the newsletter as well. That's exchange. Exchange in the modern world, here's a wonderful example of Facebook. I know that DRI can do things like this, where you can actually now start doing surveys and things in Facebook, built in. This way of actually capturing information as long as you give some value in exchange. E-purchase. I don't need to talk about this for long. We all know about e-purchase, but interestingly enough, e-purchase is not the ultimate give to get. It's a very tactical thing. You do learn a couple of things, but not nearly as much as you would think. The biggest one comes with convert. Convert is where there is an actual exchange. It might be for points or money, the Nectar card, the Lufthansa Miles and More, all of the different loyalty cards we have are examples. But the best examples we just saw from Lithium is where people come and they decide to exchange something. their time, their knowledge, their information, and they get something in return that's important to them. Here's my TripAdvisor page. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm quite proud of the fact that 1,709 readers have said that the entries I've given of suggestions of where to stay and hotels to avoid, that people think it's absolutely fantastic. I don't get any money for this, but it gives you a good idea of the sorts of things that can be done. I'm not going to spend more time on this because I think Lithium did a much better job than I ever could of explaining this. But what he was showing is an example of converting. Here's a little example that I like. This is what Swisscom calls call center to crowdsourcing. It's how they went through and they made the distinction of which touch point are we going to use for which issue. Sometimes we need to give a fast response. Sometimes we want people to help themselves in the community. Sometimes we need to notify system. Attention please, the BlackBerry system went down. We're very, very sorry. It should be back up in a couple of hours. And installation, absolutely fantastic. They discovered that people need to see how something works, and they put YouTube videos. They've had 600,000 sessions a month that they've gotten up. 96% of them are answered. 5,000 answers from the top users. In the first little while, 2,500 hours. You've seen some of these statistics. This is an example of how you can convert and use some of these things. But that's not the last. Remember some of those private information things? Things about sexual preference, medical disease? Every once in a while there will be a need for that, and I call it to divulge. Here is an absolutely wonderful site called the Wells Project. It's there to help women who have, for whatever reason, become infected with HIV. It can get very private, it can get very personal, and the women there are willing to share a lot of information because they see value in, if they can describe exactly what they have, they get a lot of help from the community. It's a wonderful nonprofit organization in the United States, and in my opinion, the best example of when divulge might actually bring something. Reciprocity, give to get. That's what we've been talking about. If we take a look at the touch points and we take a look at what we as organizations can provide as value with the different 7 things, and at the same time, across the top, we take a look at that. What you end up with is this. You end up with a table where you can actually, for your organization, start making the decisions. When I'm using social media, when I've decided the touch point is important, I can actually go in and I know the types of information that are required so that I can actually be very specific in making sure that I'm giving value so that I can get the information to continue. Now, why are we doing this? Because I'm trying to get rid of that cloud. The organizations I work with are trying to get rid of that cloud. We are trying to move further and further over to the left with each of our different types of reciprocity. Maybe we don't know the individual and have 100 pieces of information, but we can work with that information. And of course, the real goal is to start moving the customers, if they want to, up that chain. Here's my final slide. What is this? Does anybody know? This is the first example in writing of what's called dance choreography. Yeah? How dancers, music, in other words, how everything goes together and written down. What I've started talking about is what I call touch point choreography. If we understand the different channels, we understand where our customers move, we can actually go through, target those customers, understand their needs, define the decision cycle, decide which touch points are good now and for the future for specific things. We can decide on the impact we're going to do, and that's always a two-way impact. By understanding give to get, we can go off and choreograph that absolutely delighted experience for the customer. That was very fast. I hope you've got a few ideas. Every example I've used here is in the white paper. DRI has been very good about providing the white paper as a part of the conference proceedings, so you'll be able to get it. I'm looking forward to talking to you later about this, but in the meantime, thank you for listening.
presented 5 minutes. Congratulations. You can see it now.